Hey YouTube, it's Eric. I just got to do one more video for the night because I was just browsing through. I covered a little bit of this topic in the last video I did, but I was browsing through the Philademic Society's page at Georgetown, and I just you'll see what I'm talking about. This was just I couldn't believe this, but the very first thing that the first debate, the Jesuit Philademic Society. If I can get a photo of it here. Philademic Society is known as like a quote unquote debating society at Jesuit Georgetown University. And the first debate they had on, you'll see this, like the first debate the Philademic Society had was who is a better leader, George Washington or Napoleon Bonaparte? Like two of the biggest like agents and tools of the Jesuits like in history. Like, are you kidding me? Who's a better leader, George Washington or Napoleon Bonaparte? Like, you couldn't pick two better guys that were historically just tools of the papacy. Here's the logo of the Philademic Society right here. And this is what I was talking about right here, though. Okay, in 1830, students under the leadership of Father James A. Ryder, S.J., later elevated university president, founded the Philademic Society. See if I can get a photo of this guy here. This is the founder of the quote unquote Philademic Society, secret society at Rome or at Georgetown. I got to me this is very much like the skull and bones of Georgetown. Yeah, here's a picture of him here, Reverend James Ryder, S.J. There he is, and he also worked at Holy Cross. It looks like there he is, Father James Ryder, the Jesuit who founded the Philademic movement. There's another photo of him here. Okay, going back here. Okay, Philademic Society. So Father James A. Ryder, S.J. became president. The only other student group at that time was a religious group, was the Sodality of Our Lady. The Philademic Society first debate was on the topic of Napoleon Bonaparte or George Washington, which was the better man. Yeah, so who's the better man, who's the better leader? Okay. Though a secular society, the Philademic Austin recognized Georgetown's Catholic traditions, and beginning in 1841, added an additional commemoration of the Jesuit landing at St. Mary's City, Maryland, to their calendar. And the same with Napoleon Bonaparte. Like Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica right after the Jesuits were actually banned from Spain. And where did the banished Jesuits all go? They went to Corsica, and then Napoleon Bonaparte is born. Napoleon Bonaparte then proceeds to wage war on every single country in Europe that had just previously banned the Jesuits. Interestingly, like this guy was essentially Napoleon's like handler here, Emmanuel Joseph Sieyes. So he was a French Roman Catholic clergyman and political writer. He was one of the chief political theorists of the French Revolution, and also played a prominent role in the French consulate in the First French Empire. His 1789 pamphlet, What is the Third Estate, became the manifesto of the French Revolution, helping transform the Estates General into the National Assembly. He was offered a position on the French Directory but turned it down after becoming a director in 1799. He was among the instigators of the coup d'etat of the 18 Brumaire, okay, which brought Napoleon Bonaparte to power. He also coined the term sociology, okay, or sociologue, okay, which is turned into sociology, in an unpublished manuscript, and made significant theoretical contributions to the nascent social sciences. And look where Emmanuel Joseph Sieyes was educated. Look at this. Okay, his earliest education came by the way of tutors and of the Jesuits. He spent some time at the College of the Doctrine et Dragonin. He originally also wanted to join the military and become a soldier. Okay, so right there, you had a Jesuit as the leader of Napoleon's coup d'etat. Okay, you can't make this up. Okay. So here, Size's pamphlets played a key role in shaping the currents of the revolution. Okay, interesting with the French Revolution. Like the French Revolution famously was when we saw the guillotine, the killing machine, the guillotine being deployed, and the founder, like Joseph Ignace, almost like a play on Ignatius, like Ignatius Loyola. Joseph Ignace Guillotine was the French physician, politician, and a Freemason, Jesuit trained, who advocated the use of the killing device. Okay, and look at here, Joseph Ignace Guillotine. Okay, he spent his early years were spent among the Jesuits, and he taught for some years at the Irish College of Bordeaux. Okay, and Joseph Ignace Guillotine here was a Mason. Here he joined several lodges. He was very active as a Mason. As a deputy of the Grand Lodge from 1772, he took a part in the birth of the Grand Orient of France and through all of its conventions until 1790. Joseph Ignace Guillotine was another huge Jesuit player connection to the French Revolution, like Emmanuel Size. Okay, and like an interesting, Joseph Guillotine advocated the works of Edward Jenner. Edward Jenner was the pioneer of vaccinations, and Guillotine was promoting Edward Jenner's work in France. Interesting too, like Maximilien Robespierre was another tyrant of the French Revolution. And Robespierre here was educated at the College de Clermont in Paris, the same college that actually wrote the, all the degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, or at least the first 25. I've seen sources that the last 8 were written in Prussia by Frederick the Great. Yeah, and actually, here's Tim Russert that I just covered in the last video. Tim Russert went to 2 Jesuit schools, Canisius High School, John Carroll University, and got an honorary degree from Jesuit Scranton. We see Maximilien Robespierre, the tyrant of the French Revolution, known as associated. You see here, he's known as associated with the Reign of Terror, educated by Jesuits. Okay, and like I've done a whole video on George Washington's Jesuit connections. George Washington called the Jesuit to his deathbed, Leonard Neal. George Washington was very intimate with Jesuits Charles, John, and Daniel Carroll. Okay, George Washington got a Roman Catholic Freemason, Pierre Charles L'Enfant, to design the layout of Washington, D.C. George Washington also uh, was a key in meeting the professor figure, the figure known as professor that was present at the founding of America. That professor being Lorenzo Ricci. I just found that hilarious that the Jesuit Philademic Society said their first debate was on who is a better man, Napoleon Bonaparte or George Washington. Like that. There it is right here. I'm going to highlight that. Okay. Very revealing, I think, because both these guys were complete tools of the Jesuits. I'm going to show you. I got a great comment on my channel a couple days just that shows further proof that George Washington was a tool of the Jesuits, and that is his um, family motto, or the motto on like the George Washington crest, and that is, oh, where was that here? Yeah, that being Washington's coat of arms. You see this? The Latin on Washington's coat of arms is executus acta probat. Okay, and you see, you type this in on the, where you get a translation of this. Essentially, like it means the ends justify the means. See, exacta, exodus acta probat definition is the outcome justifies the deed. This is another way of saying the ends justify the means. Um, And George Washington, like Napoleon was like a, I'm pretty sure Napoleon was even was a Scot. I know Napoleon was a Freemason, but I think he was a Scottish Rite Mason as well. Like George Washington, and Scottish Rite Masonry has the same motto of the Jesuits, um, of the 32nd degree, ad mortem el gloriam. Okay. And the Grand Orient de France was created in the Jesuit College of the Clermont. Even like Masonic historians like Albert Mackey admit this. Yeah. But yeah, I recommend you watch my video, Jesuit Connection to George Washington. you, you can also read Tupper Saucy's book. Gotta get a drink here. You can read Tupper Saucy's book, The Rulers of Evil. For information, I think there's that more information on Washington in that book, but you see that Washington was a puppet. And interesting with Napoleon, this is from Theodore Greisinger's book here, The Mysteries of the Vatican or Crimes of the Papacy, published in 1864, Volume 2. You see here in 1801, Napoleon signed a concordat with Pope Pius VII, the same pope that restored the Jesuits in 1814. Um, Adam Weishaupt. This is right around the time where Adam Weishaupt was being connected to French Scottish Rite Freemasonry, Jesuit educated, and a professor of canon law at the Jesuit University of Ingolstadt, created the Illuminati in 1776, the same year that the United States is created. Not a coincidence that 1776, the Jesuit educated, trained Adam Weishaupt creates the Illuminati, the same year that America, quote unquote, claims independence. And the America used the flag of the British East India Tea Company, which was just like a international commercial company that the Jesuits controlled. And it was actually the professor, aka Lorenzo Ricci, that was behind that design. We see here in 1801, a concordat was signed between Napoleon and Pope Pius VII. and restored the papal supremacy over the church. The Pope, naturally very grateful, proved himself not grateful only, but even devoted to hoping through the future emperor of the world to recover all the ancient rights of the apostolic see. For this, he entitled General Bonaparte as the quote, restorer of the Catholic religion, protector of the faith, and the savior of the church from the abyss of revolution. End quote. He even decreed a new religious festival in honor of Saint Napoleon and showed great readiness to perform the coronation of the new emperor. And you can actually see pictures of the Napoleon coronation right here. And again, George Washington, in my video on him, George Washington supposedly had a photo of the Virgin Mary in his house, but here's the coronation of Napoleon Bonaparte taking place. I thought that was hilarious that the first question the Philademic Society had, who is the better man, Napoleon or George Washington? Another key point with Napoleon, I've read a Harvard article on the topic, but the Code Napoleon, the civil code that was installed in France, just like the United States, was off the Roman model of contract law and legal fictions. But you can read how the Napoleonic Code, drafted in 1804, was completely modeled off Roman Justinian contract law, like to the T. Okay. I'm just checking the comments now. Okay, I'm gonna go through all of them here. Hey, what's up, Rustin Soul, Ed Upside Down Head. If you mention the word Jesuit, you'll be fired on TV. A conservative independent radio talk show host, Michael Savage, has attacked Jesuits and the President Trump administration. I haven't seen Michael Savage attack the Jesuits. I'll have to watch his attacks on the Jesuits. But you're right though. Usually, like Lou Dobbs is a fantastic example of that. He was fired from CNN like a week after that interview where he called out Jesuit Father Thomas Reese, and Lou Dobbs' house was even like shot at. I saw CNN even did an article covering Lou Dobbs' house was shot at like a couple weeks after that interview. Tim Rooster. Actually, I'll have to watch it. Yeah, I haven't seen that Michael Savage interview in 2005. Yeah, or '06 and '07. I'll have to watch those. Yeah, it seems like Michael Savage. Like I know Michael Savage does like I've seen him like give out some truths about the CIA. Even it sounds like so. Like I think he does have like a guilty conscience, and he deep down he'll try to sprinkle out some truth every now and then. And I believe we'll have a woman and then a Roman Catholic president. Yeah, I could see that. I could see having a woman president. I think the woman president will be a Catholic Jesuit trained woman president, most likely. Interesting. Like if the Simpsons are right, according to the Simpsons, Oprah Winfrey will be president or I think that might have been the Boondocks. But I'm pretty sure the Simpsons predicted. I know that Boondocks. There's an episode where Oprah became president in 2020. I don't know if it'll be Oprah, but yeah, I could definitely see them going with a woman. Definitely a Democrat. The current chair of the Democrats, Tom Perez, educated by Jesuits. According to the America magazine, Tom Perez even has quote deep Jesuit connections. Yeah, they're all like, all and yeah, the Masons, the high level Freemasonry, Jesuitism. It's all one and the same. But I'm just gonna go through the list here. I said like now that I just found that was hilarious that the Philademic Society's first question was debating Napoleon Bonaparte or George Washington, two of the biggest agents of the Pope in like history. Interesting. But here, like when I mentioned in the last video, the Supreme Court Justice Edward Douglas White, that was the justice when Chief Justice when the Federal Reserve Act was signed. Like there was a what at Georgetown there was a white debating society that was founded in honor of the Supreme Court Justice Edward Douglas White, a former Philademician. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. The Philademic Society is located in Healy Hall, and that's named after the Jesuit Patrick Francis Healy, who was the first African American to earn a PhD. And like there's current Healy Hall today at Georgetown is named after Patrick Francis Healy, SJ. Yeah, but the Philademic Society here, I'm just gonna go down to the alumni here. Okay. I recommend you guys read the entire page. It's really interesting. Um, and the Philademic Society also has a room at the Riggs Library. And again, Riggs. There used to be a Riggs Bank that was operating at Georgetown University, but it shut down when the Knight of Malta Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet was discovered to have been laundering millions of dollars through Georgetown. Interestingly, recent debate judges at the Georgetown Philademic Society include the current Jesuit who is the White House chaplain, Pat Conroy. Yes, the current chaplain of the House of Representatives, okay, is a Jesuit. Okay, a Jesuit was put on in May 6, 2011, under Obama. So your Pat Conroy is the Jesuit, who is the uh, chaplain of the House of Representatives, and he was preceded by the first Catholic priest to be the chaplain of the House of Representatives, being Daniel P. Coughlin. I don't think he was a Jesuit, but he was a Roman Catholic priest who was educated by the Jesuits at Loyola University. Yeah. um, yeah, and he got an honorary degree from Loyola. Okay, that's funny. Yeah. Where was that here? Philademic Society. Yeah. Yeah. So recent judges, E.J. Dion. He's a columnist for the Washington Post. Dan Lundgren is a U.S. Representative of California. Has been a judge at the Philademic Society. Interesting. See, this guy went to Santa Clara. A lot of the people in California do. Yeah, he went to Catholic St. Anthony High School and the Catholic University of Notre Dame, and he was the 29th Attorney General. Interestingly, he was the chairman of the House Administration Committee in California. From Catholic Dan Lundgren. Okay, you see here, yeah, these were the other recent judges. I'm just going to pull up all these names. Alfred Wynn was a judge at the Georgetown University Philademic Society. He was educated at Jesuit Georgetown University. A current member of the, or he's a member of the House of Representatives from Maryland for over 15 years. Also a member of the Maryland Senate. Okay. Also a member of the House Committee on Energy. Joseph Lota, here, former public servant, former politician. He was chairman of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and was a former deputy mayor of New York City. Okay, a former mayor of New York, Robert Wagner Jr., was a Knight of Malta, papal chamberlain, and Jimmy Carter's private personal representative to the Pope. Okay, and you see here, Joe Lota was raised Catholic, and he went to Georgetown. He got an honorary degree from Georgetown University School of McDonough, yeah, the business school. Jesuit trained, former deputy mayor of New York, chairman of Metropolitan Transportation Authority. You see, Chide Fieldbaum. Chide Fieldbaum is a commissioner of Equal Important Opportunity Commission and a former professor at Georgetown. You see, she was confirmed to serve on the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, by the United States Senate. Okay. You see, she went to Georgetown. She went to, oh, interesting, she went to the Jewish Yeshiva University. If she went to Georgetown as well, or Harvard. But yeah, she joined the faculty at Jesuit Georgetown. These are again just these are the judges. These are recent judges at this quote unquote debating society at Georgetown. Here's this guy here is also let me see here. Yeah, so this guy's a university professor at Georgetown, and he works for MSNBC, PBS, the NPR, and the Brookings Institute, and the Washington Post. Eugene Joseph Dion Jr. That's funny. Yeah, he's born Roman Catholic, French Canadian. Yeah, I think that was all the debater or the recent judges. And this guy here, Thomas Ambrose, a United States Circuit Judge of the United States Court of Appeals. He went to Jesuit Georgetown. Okay. And after law school, he clerked for the Chief Justice Daniel H. Herman of the Supreme Court of Delaware. And Delaware is a state that the DuPont family actually owns. You can read about that in the book DuPont Dynasty Behind the Nylon Curtain. Thomas L. Ambro, you see here, Georgetown educated. Okay, current United States judge on the Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, appointed by Jesuit educated Bill Clinton. Go figure. Yeah, well, you know what? Actually, I'm just looking at some of the comments now. I do think you're onto something when you say the New Testament world order. Because, well, for example, like Romans 13 is a very revealing verse. That all ecclesiastical bodies and feudalistic governments fall back to Romans 13. Um, and actually, the Masonic oath, like, don't you guys notice how similar the Masonic oath is to the Jesuit oath? Like how that they'll like rip out like the bowels of their stomachs. They'll cut their heart out if they give out the secrets of the order. Very Jesuitical. Like, as you see, just the people who are the judges of the debate. You see how prominent this society is. Okay. And they do intercollegiate debates with all these other controlled universities. Or the current, these are current officer corps. Okay, I think these are people who are like at the school right now. But I'm just gonna go through the list here of notable uh, Philademicians. Okay, right here. So you got William Matthews Merrick was a congressman from Maryland. Okay, so the congressman of Maryland from 1885 to 1889. Okay, and you see here he graduated from Jesuit Georgetown University. Okay, his uncle William Matthews was the president of Georgetown College. William Matthews was an American Catholic priest from Maryland, became the first ordained Catholic priest in British America, and the fifth Catholic priest in the United States. He was briefly a novice in the Society of Jesus. Okay, so check out this. Read the whole Wikipedia page of the. I'll link this in the description. Read the whole Wikipedia page of this William Matthews, who's related to Philademic Society member, Jesuit Georgetown educated William Merrick. Okay. He was also on the Supreme Court. Yeah, he was on the Supreme Court of the District of Columbia. And at this point, the District of Columbia was made a corporation by the Philademic Society member president Ulysses Grant. Okay, we see here Daniel Carroll Diggs. This motor related to Carroll here. This possibly could be a Carroll relation to like the Charles, Daniel, and John. But you see here Daniel Carroll Diggs served as the Maryland House of Delegates in 1849 and served twice as the state attorney in Prince George's, Maryland. He attended Georgetown University in the 1830s, where he was a founding member of the society. So wow, so you have a Carroll. So the Philademic Society was possibly founded by a descendant of the Carrolls. And as late as 1960, there was a General Joseph Francis Carroll, Jesuit educated at Loyola Chicago, and was going to become a Catholic priest that was the founding member of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Yeah. I don't think there's a photo of this Daniel Carroll. Maybe this is him here. I think that's the original. That's the Daniel Carroll that goes back to the founding, not Daniel Carroll Diggs. Very interesting there, though, the Daniel Carroll Diggs connection. Very, very intriguing. Okay, I'm going to go back here to the list, though. Alexander Dmitri, an American diplomat. He was died in 1883. He worked as a U.S. ambassador to Costa Rica and Nicaragua in the 1800s. Alexander Dmitri graduated at Georgetown College, and during the Civil War, he was Postmaster General, Chief of Finance of the Postal Service of the Confederacy. Interesting. He was a Chief of Finance of the Postal Office of the Confederacy during the Civil War. Is that because why the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, was writing letters to Pope Pius IX? And is that also why? Because the Jesuits had a vested interest to continue the slave trade in the Confederacy, and the cold Confederate economy was backed by Roman Catholic countries, Portugal and Spain. Interesting. Like I already showed you, Edward Douglas White, who's connected to the society, Jesuit educated judge, Supreme Court justice, while the Federal Reserve Act was signed, fought for the Confederate Army during the Civil War. You'll see a reoccurring theme of Jesuit educated men supporting the Confederacy. Okay. Charles Constantine Pies was a Roman Catholic priest and writer. He was educated at Georgetown. He left. He entered the Society of Jesus as a novice, that being Charles Constantine Pies. He left the Jesuits when the death of his father caused him to return to the United States, and he was ordained a diocesan priest in 1825. He was assistant to the St. Patrick Church in Washington, D.C. He served as the chaplain of the Senate. Okay, so actually, so the chaplain of the United States Senate in 1832 to 1833 was a Jesuit. Charles Constantine Pies. That's the exact 1832 is the year that Samuel Morse wrote his classic book, A Foreign Conspiracy Against the Liberties of the United States, that everyone should read, and you can find it on archive.org. Pies was the first and to date the only Roman Catholic United States Senate chaplain, coming into that office on December 11th, 1832. So the Jesuits had a Senate chaplain in the United States Senate as early as 1832, that being Charles Constantine Pies. Okay, these are names that these need to become household names. Okay, if anything's gonna change. Okay. You recently saw like Nancy Pelosi brought out a Jesuit, Father Stephen Privet, at the time president of the Jesuit University of San Francisco, to give a prayer in the U.S. House of Representatives. Solomon Hillen Jr. Look at this. Solomon Hillen Jr. was the U.S. representative from Maryland and the mayor of Baltimore. You see, this is back still in the 1800s. Hillen was at the family estate, and guys, Baltimore was being run by the Calvert family, Lord Baltimore first to four. George Calvert was converted to Catholicism by Sir Tobias Matthew, the alter ego of Sir Francis Bacon. You see here, Solomon Hillen Jr. Was graduated from the Jesuit Georgetown College, founded by Jesuit priest John Carroll, was admitted to the bar and commenced practice in Baltimore. He served as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates from 1834 to 1838. Hillen was elected as a Democrat to the 26th Congress. Afterward, he resumed practice and served as mayor of Baltimore from 1842 to 1845. So he had a Jesuit-trained mayor of Baltimore in the 1840s, Solomon Hillen Jr. Okay. That's right. Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the comments. Yeah, the Jesuit oath is cataloged in the Library of Congress. That's right, and it's been reprinted in many like books exposing the Jesuits throughout history. Like for you like a good book I have by Giovanni Niccoloni, written in 1851. The history of the Jesuits. Niccoloni reprints the Jesuit constitutions in that book as well, and the Jesuit constitutions say that the Black Pope is to be regarded as Jesus Christ and like sovereign of the universe. Real shit. Yeah, actually, I think I think the Jesuits put this information out there too because like they know that like people aren't looking for the truth. Um, and then the list that they do give, like there's many more Jesuits that are actually, or there are many more Jesuit coadjutors who are educated by the Jesuits than are shown on the alumni list. We have Francis Kernan. You see here, United States Senator from New York, 1875 to 1881. The United States was a corporation in 1871. You see here, Francis Kern, United States Senator from New York, graduated Georgetown University in 1836. He's a member of the Philademic Society. He was a reporter for decisions. He was a reporter for of decisions of the New York Court of Appeals. Okay. You see here, Kernan was elected senator of New York, the first Catholic senator from New York. There you go, guys. Look at that. The first Catholic senator from New York, Jesuit trained. Yeah. It's not surprising. Francis Kernan, also a member of the Philademic Society. William Wing Loren. Okay, he was an American soldier who served in the armies of the United States. Look at this. He served in the Confederacy in Egypt. Another Jesuit trained soldier serving in the Confederacy. Okay. You see here, he ran away to fight in the Texas War of Independence. Was soon retrieved by his father. Um, Lauren was sent to the Alexandria boarding school in Alexandria, Virginia. Completed secondary education. He attended Jesuit Georgetown from 1839 to 1840, and then went to study law and was admitted to the Florida bar. Well, that's probably why he was admitted to the bar so quickly, because he just went to Georgetown. We see in the Civil War. Um, he famously butted heads with superior officers, Stonewall Jackson. Interestingly, he probably butted heads with superior officers because he was sympathizing with the Confederacy throughout the duration of the war. I don't want this video to go on too long, but I recommend read through all the Wikipedia profiles of all these guys. But another Confederate soldier here, William Wing Loring, educated by the Jesuits. James Ryder Randall. Here's another huge connection to Confederacy. James Ryder Randall. He's an American journalist, and he was best remembered as the author of Maryland, My Maryland. Again, Maryland named after the Virgin Mary. Okay. Randall was born in Baltimore, Maryland. He was named after Father James A. Ryder. Okay, like I showed you a picture of Father James A. Ryder, the founder of the Philademic Society, 20th president of Georgetown. You see here, James Rydell Randall is most remembered for writing the poem Maryland, My Maryland, which is also the reason for his being called, quote, the poet laureate of the lost cause. Look at this. It became a war hymn of the Confederacy. Look, okay. I'm going to zoom in and just observe the words on the screen. I'm not making this up. Okay. Look at this. Look at here. Look what I'm highlighting. This is a Jesuit educated poet. Okay, James Rydell Randall. Okay. Unbelievable. Again, you can read the letters that Jefferson Davis was writing to the Pope. And on the other, you have on the other side Abraham Lincoln saying that there's a dark cloud on the horizon, on America's horizon, coming from Rome. Abraham Lincoln said that this war, the Civil War, was impossible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. Okay. So you got here's a Canadian senator. Look at this. George Casimir de Saulles, a Canadian senator, was a member of the Georgetown University Philademic Society. Okay, George Casimir de Saulles was a Canadian businessman, statesman, and senator. De Saulles holds the record for the oldest serving politician. Appointed Senate of Canada representing the province of Quebec in 1907 at age 80, de Saulles served for 23 years before dying at age 102. He had a Jesuit-educated senator in the Canadian Senate as early as 1907. Okay, de Saulles was born in Saint Hyacinthe, Lower Canada, the son of John de Saulles and a nephew of Louis George Papineau. Okay, who led the Roman Catholic rebellion. Interesting. That's probably Roman Catholic driven. De Saulles attended college at Georgetown University, where he was a member of the Jesuit Philademic Society. Yeah. Before he was president, before becoming senator, De Saulles was president of the Bank Saint Hyacinthe and mayor of Saint Hyacinthe, Quebec. So he was a Jesuit-educated bankster. Oh, that's funny. George Casimir De Saulles. This is a very influential list. Okay. Here's a former U.S. congressman from Illinois, Bernard G. Caulfield. A member of the Philademic Society, born in Alexandria, Virginia. He was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Illinois, 1st District. Caulfield received a classical education. He graduated from Georgetown University in Pennsylvania and then went to the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Okay, Trump also went to UPenn. Trump went to Fordham as well. In 1977, when America was already a corporation via the Organic Act, he served as chairman of the Committee on Expenditures in the Department of Justice. Okay. And Bernard G. Caulfield, Jesuit educated. He was, let me see, interred in Calvary Cemetery. Sounds Catholic. Here's Thomas Heron. Here's a Colombian. So Thomas Heron Mosquera was a Colombian diplomat, signed but became the Hay-Heron Treaty of 1903. So that was the Treaty of the 6 Days. Okay. Actually, so I'm pretty sure this was. I'm pretty sure this is when the Panama Canal was proposed to being cut through Colombia at the time. Yeah, that's what it was. So go through that page here. But Thomas Heron, who named the Hay-Heron Treaty of 1903 in Colombia, graduated from Jesuit Georgetown. Okay, and he was the maternal grandson of Thomas Soprano, who served as president of Colombia. Okay, so his father was the president of Colombia, and his grandfather was the president of Colombia. Talk about aristocracy. Okay. Thomas Heron was in the Philademic Society. Yeah, I was going through the. Okay, I'm seeing here, NBC. Like Jeremiah. Actually, let me pull this up here. MSNBC. Okay. There's a McLaughlin Jesuit priest on MSNBC. Yeah, I think it was John McLaughlin or. Oh, no, Johnny McLaughlin is another Jesuit connection. Get this guy's first name here. There was a John McLaughlin, yeah, right here. This is what I wanted to show you. This John McLaughlin was a speechwriter for Richard Nixon as well. That's disclosed in Abermanhattan's book, The Vatican, Washington, Moscow Alliance. John McLaughlin, he had his own show on MSNBC called The McLaughlin Group. See, the McLaughlin Group is a syndicated half-hour a week public affairs program in the United States. You see, John McLaughlin, education career. Okay, he went to the Jesuit Boston College Theological Seminary to prepare for the priesthood, and he entered the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church in 1947 and was ordained a Jesuit priest in 1959. McLaughlin spent some years as a high school teacher at the Jesuit Fairfield Prep. Okay, then he earned a PhD of philosophy from Columbia. He wrote for the Jesuit magazine America. He spent 2 months. Let me see here. McLaughlin became it's even on his Wikipedia. McLaughlin then became a speechwriter for U.S. President Richard Nixon, who also had Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. as his personal representative to the Pope. and he was friends with Pat Buchanan, who's also a good buddy. Good Pat Buchanan's old pals with Alex Jones, Knight of Malta, Jesuit educated at Georgetown, founder of CNN's Crossfire, or the original host. Actually, in 1970, John McLaughlin sought permission from the Jesuit order to run for a seat in the United States Senate representing Rhode Island. They had given permission to fellow Jesuit father Robert Drinan, who ran successfully for United States representative in Massachusetts. And actually, Father Robert Drinan was a Jesuit that was a member of the United States House of Representatives right here, and he was actually pro-abortion as well. And the Jesuits, you can read in Theodore Greisinger's book, he quotes a Jesuit Father Ariel in the 1800s, writing how he's pro-abortion. But yeah, you had a Jesuit though. You had a Jesuit priest who's actually a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Robert Drinan, S.J. You can't make this stuff up. He went to Boston College. Okay. He sought a seat in Congress. Okay, from the anti-Vietnam War platform, a controlled opposition. Okay. This is, you see how like in the whole Watergate scandal, you had a Jesuit calling for the impeachment of Nixon. That's because like the whole Watergate scandal was just to hide that a Roman Catholic company, the Societe Generale Immobiliare, built the entire Watergate complex. The entire thing, Watergate complex, was built by Societe Generale Immobiliare. Okay. Um. Oh, you see here, Rupert Murdoch. Yeah. Rupert Murdoch is a Knight of Malta and a Knight of Saint Gregory the Great, or Saint John Jerusalem. I have to find a source, but yeah, no doubt Alex Jones is a Knight of Malta. No doubt. And a Freemason. No doubt. See, Ted Cruz is a Canadian. Actually, Ted Cruz, yeah, he was technically he's actually not allowed to run for president because he wasn't even born in the United States. So you see how much of a mockery, uh, like that, the whole legal process in the U.S. is. Like I've been mentioning, Edward Douglas White was the Chief Justice when the Federal Reserve Act was signed. He was in the Philademic Society. He fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. He was nominated to be the Chief Justice by the Skull and Bonesman, former President William Howard Taft, who was Theodore Roosevelt's personal representative to the Pope. William Howard Taft is still the only man in U.S. history to be both Chief Justice and United States President. Why? Because he was a personal representative to the Pope and a Skull and Bones. Edward Douglas White was in the Philademic Society. Um, Stephen Russell Mallory Jr. was a U.S. Senator and U.S. Representative from Florida, served as a Democrat. He was the son of U.S. Senator Stephen Russell Mallory. Yeah, he went to Jesuit Georgetown College. He fought in the Confederate Navy. Guys, do you see this reoccurring theme of all these Jesuit educated guys joining the Confederacy to fight to keep slavery intact? Do you see this? You see, during the American Civil War, Jesuit educated Philademic Society member Stephen Mallory II entered the Confederate Army in the fall of 1864, appointed midshipman in the Confederate Army. Okay, the reoccurring theme. Okay. And you see here, he was also a member of the Florida House of Representatives in 1876. Again, America was a corporation in 1871. He was also a U.S. member of the House of Representatives, Florida's first district, and a U.S. Senator from Florida. Stephen Russell Mallory Jr., Confederate Navyman. Augustin de Urbichin Green was the grandson of Augustin Ruby, the first emperor of the independent Mexico, and his consort Empress Anna Maria. He became the adopted son, along with cousin Salvador Ubri Marzan, of Mexico's only other royal heads of state, Emperor Maximilian I of Mexico, who was actually assassinated, rightfully so, by Benito Juarez for his treason, and Empress Carlito of Mexico. After the death of the treasonous Habsburg Emperor Maximilian, the Jesuit puppet, in 1867, he became the Jesuit-educated Augustin Green, became the head of the Imperial House of Mexico, but he had no children. The Jesuit-trained Augustin de Urbitin Green passed his claims to Maria Josepha Sophie de Urbitude, the daughter of his cousin. Here, post-monarchy, he went to Georgetown University. Interesting. After he published articles critical of Porfirio Diaz, and he was arrested on charges of sedition. Eventually returned to Georgetown University as a professor. Oh my goodness. This gets funnier and funnier. Yeah, that's right. This like absolutely right. Scum rises to the top. That's absolutely for sure. Um, Great point, Truth Rising. Yeah, MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski, yeah, daughter, and actually Mika Brzezinski's father, Zabrenu Brzezinski, was also educated by the Jesuits at Loyola High School in Montreal. And Zabrenu Brzezinski was the guy who made the call in the Jonestown massacre to let the bodies rot in Guyana so that American medical staff couldn't make any medical distinction on the bodies. That was Brzezinski who gave those orders. Yeah, and Mika Brzezinski went to Georgetown, and Mika Brzezinski was the first reporter on the scene at 9/11. You had a Jesuit-educated reporter, the first on the scene to let us know what's happening. um, Absolutely, Brett Kavanaugh is a huge New World Order puppet. Actually, you can see a picture of Brett Kavanaugh meeting with Pope John Paul II in 2004, and I actually found Kavanaugh uh, actually encouraged George Bush to see Pope John Paul II. Okay. Brett Kavanaugh was in the Federalist Society before he was even a lawyer. Think about that. Okay, and Donald Trump, all 15 of the 17 lawyers Trump has nominated are in the Federalist Society. Jesuit-educated Neil Garouche was in the Federalist Society. Jesuit-educated Philademic Society member Antonin Scalia was Opus Dei was in the Federalist Society. Jesuit-educated Clarence Thomas, puppet of the Pope, former Monsanto lawyer, currently a Catholic papist on the Supreme Court, is in the Federalist Society. Yeah. You see here, actually, yeah, Trump is ran by Israel. Actually, it's funny with Israel, like the biggest Jewish military think tank in the United States, the JINSA, Jewish Institute of National Security in America, is headed up by a Jesuit-trained David P. Steinem from Georgetown. Hilarious. Like the first Israeli ambassador to China was a devout Zionist, Zeb Subrat, who was educated by the Jesuits at Georgetown. Like you had a knight of Saint Gregory the Great, Shimon Peres, Prime Minister of Israel during the 90s, who signed the Vatican Accord in Oslo, Norway in 1993, which gave like all the holy sites in Israel over to the Catholic Church. And actually, like a shout out to George Widger, his friend, researcher, fellow researcher of mine. George, I just don't know the name. George has told me that there's a current Chief Justice or a Supreme, or not. George told me there's a current member on the Supreme Court of Israel who is a professor at Georgetown. Okay. Yep, both of Trump's Supreme Court picks are Jesuit trained Catholics as well. Absolutely. Actually, and Bayer Monsanto is like a as an offshoot of IG Farben. You know, IG Farben, like the CIA in West Germany. Well, like with the Frankfurt air raid, I did a video on this. In 1944, there was an air raid in Frankfurt, 12,000 tons of explosives that spared the IG Farben building and the Catholic Church of Frankfurt. And then the CIA moved their head office into the IG Farben building, and now IG Farben has branched off into like Bayer aspirin. IG Farben was the company that was engineering the poison gas and the death camps in Auschwitz. They even had a Polish slave labor camp at Auschwitz. Disgusting stuff. Eric Condé Nast was an American publisher, entrepreneur, business magnate. He founded Condé Nast, a mass media company, now a subsidiary of Advanced Publications, who published brands as the Vanity Fair, Vogue, and the New Yorker. So he had a Jesuit-educated media magnate connected to the Philademic Society. He studied finances at Georgetown. Okay, he was a member of the Philademic Society. Okay, right there. Condé Nast. Um, Here's Robert J. Collier, one of the founders of the Collier's magazine, named after him. Robert J. Collier was the son of Peter's Philion Collier. Good information. The average Manhattan rates in the dollar in the Vatican that Collier's magazine is like nothing but imperialism. Uh, you see here, he was a principal in the publishing company P.F. Collier and Son. Upon his father's death, he became the head of the company and for a time was the editor of Collier's Weekly. Jesuit-educated Robert J. Collier was also president of the Aero Club of America. Okay. Robert Joseph Collier, and you see right here, educated at Georgetown, he's in the Philademic Society. Okay. You can look this up. The University of Oxford was created in a papal bull. Okay, actually, yeah, it goes back, yeah, even to like this goes back to the time when like King John III, uh, or when Pope Innocent III made King John his little bitch in England, him to sign the tithes over to the papacy. Yeah, so interesting how Collier's magazine is even connected to the Jesuits in Georgetown. via this Philademic Society. Actually, Philip Hart, this is the Roman Catholic senator that introduced the Hart-Celler Act, which was like a forerunner to Ronald Reagan's amnesty, which is the Hart-Celler Act is one of the first acts of legislation that opened up this Roman Catholic invasion. And Philip Hart was the United States senator that that the Hart-Celler Act is named after. Philip Hart went to Jesuit Georgetown University and attended West Philadelphia Catholic High School. Look at that. And he was in the Philademic Society as well. U.S. Senator from Michigan, 49th Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, Philip Hart. Richard Allen Gordon is an assistant dean at the Georgetown University Law Center. There's no picture of him here. Antonin Scalia was in the Philademic Society, former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, nominated by Ronald Reagan, who was made a Knight of Malta in 1898 or 1989. You can watch. I have the archival footage on my channel. Ronald Reagan referred to Knight of Malta P. Jader Grace as Mr. President. Okay, aka Ronald Reagan is submitting like a little bitch to the Vatican. Yeah. Well, actually, a trilateral. You know, the trilateral. Well, the trilateral committee. Archbishop Timothy Dolan is a member on the trilateral commission. Bob Shrum here, Georgetown University. He was. Let me see here. Director of the Jesse M. Unruh Institute of Politics at the Secular University of Southern California. He had a Jesuit running that. He had a Jesuit educated. Let me see here. He worked as a senior advisor to the Jesuit-educated John Kerry campaign and the 2000 American Legion Al Gore campaign. He wrote the famous speeches for Ted Kennedy, Jesuit-educated Ted Kennedy is Jesuit-educated at Georgetown, and Bob Shrum, he wrote Ted Kennedy's speech at the 1980 DNC convention, conceded in supporting President Jimmy Carter, who had his own papal representative. Jimmy Carter also sent his mom to see the Pope, as source in Abermanhattan's Murder in the Vatican. And Jimmy Carter's wife, Rosalind Carter, did a photo shoot with the Jesuit priest that went by Jim Jones. Um, that's what the Jesuit priest that called himself Jim Jones did a photo shoot with Rosalind Carter. Shrum also served as a speechwriter to the Roman New York Mayor John Lindsay, and he's speechwriter to the Roman Catholic George McGovern, Jesuit-educated George McGovern. Look at that. Ronald Reagan. Yeah, that was a great point, Jeremiah. Ronald Reagan officially reestablished relations with the Vatican in 1984 by sending Knight of Malta William Wilson as the first official American ambassador to the Vatican. Although like it was a mockery, like every single president since Ulysses Grant has had his own personal representative to the Pope. Under Reagan, they legally got a ambassador from the United States to the Vatican. And the second, interestingly, like the second United States ambassador to the Vatican was a Knight of Malta, Frank Shakespeare, who was the president of the CBS Corporation. Robert S. Bennett. Yeah, Robert S. Bennett was. I covered this in my video on Jesuit Brooklyn Prep. Robert S. Bennett was the lawyer for Bill Clinton's Monica Lewinsky psyop. He was also the lawyer for Paul Wolfowitz in the World Bank scandal. He was the lawyer for Clark Clifford in the Bank of Credit Commerce International scandal. He was the lawyer for Judith Miller in the Valerie Plame CIA leak grand jury scandal. He worked for the law firm Hogan and Hartson, that's named after Jesuit-educated Frank Hogan, who got the papal knight Ed Doheny off during the Teapot Dome scandal. And Robert S. Bennett was also on the member of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. I'll get a picture of this guy. Robert S. Bennett was connected to the Philademic Society. Huge connection that the whole Monica Lewinsky shenanigans was an absolute psyop. Okay. The lawyer here, Robert S. Bennett, proves that. Okay. Going back here. Actually, do you guys know this? Actually, I'll show you guys a connection here with the IMF if you haven't seen this name before. Peter Sutherland. This guy's an evil fella. Just watch an interview of Peter Sullivan. If you just want to watch evil incarnate, watch Peter Sutherland interviews. See, Peter Sutherland was the chairman of Goldman Sachs from 1995 to 2015. He was the director of the World Trade Organization from 93 to 95. He was the director of the European Commissioner for Competition from 85 to 89. He's the Attorney General of Ireland from 1981 to 1982 and 1982 to 1994. Sutherland was the United Nations Special Representative to the Secretary General for International Migration until 2017, aka Catholic Invasion. And you see here, early life. Where did the Peter Sutherland get trained? Related, or Peter Sutherland was the former head of the IMF. Well, he went to the Jesuit Gonzaga College in Dublin. Did you look at that? Okay. And Peter Sutherland is also in, or he was in. He's dead now, but he was in the Knight of Saint Michael and Saint, or let me see here. Is this Knight of Saint Gregory the Great? Yeah, Order of Saint Michael and Saint George. Peter Sutherland was also in the Order of Prince Henry, right there. And Peter Sutherland was also in. He was a senior counsel to the Queen of England. Actually, and again, Andrew Bertie, one of the former Grand Masters of the Knights of Malta, was a cousin of Queen Elizabeth II, who is a Dame of Malta herself. All connected. Okay, continuing to go through here though. Francis Keating was a governor of Oklahoma from 1995 to 2003. He was in the Georgetown Philademic Society. I presume he went to Jesuit Georgetown University. Practicing Roman Catholic, he attended Kashka Hall Preparatory School, which is an Augustinian Roman Catholic prep school in Tulsa. And then he went to the Jesuit Georgetown University. And then he was made a special agent for the FBI. Would you look at that? The same FBI that had J. Edgar Hoover run it for 50 years, that was given an honorary degree from Jesuit Georgetown in 1939. J. Edgar Hoover's personal assistant was none other than Joseph Francis Carroll, the Jesuit educated general who went on to found the Defense Intelligence Agency. And that's why J. Edgar Hoover had a plan actually to suspend habeas corpus in 1950. Um, Actually, Asa, look at this. I'm just this those families that you just said. Look at this. This proves the credence to that. There was a recent Borgia that was the president of Ecuador. Look at this. Rodrigo. Look at this. Borgia. Look at that. Rodrigo Borgia Ceballos was president of Ecuador from August 10th, 1988 to August 10th, 1992. Okay. Pope Alexander VI was actually called Rodrigo Borgia. Okay. As well. Pope Alexander VI, who sent Christopher Columbus over to conquer North and South America for the church. And there was a recent Medici. I'm not going to get too sidetracked with this, but I just want to show you that these bloodline families are still power. You had a military dictator of Brazil, Emilio Gustavo de Medici, or Medici. You see here? His authoritarian rule marked the apex of the Brazilian military government. Okay. Years of lead and torture. During his rule by the Medici family, the papal nobility family, we see here the Catholic Variants, Sao Paulo, and Protestant militaries obtained thousands of classified documents that detailed the use of torture during Medici's term. These revelations shocked Brazilians who had been unaware of the extensive use of torture. Of course, Richard Nixon, the Jesuit puppet, and Medici discussed coordinating their efforts to quote unquote overthrow the Jesuit educated Fidel Castro. What a surface level psyop that was. Incredible. Like the supposed 600 attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro is a complete psyop. Okay, complete psyop. Okay. You can see a picture of Fidel Castro even meeting with the Grand Master of the Knights of Malta, Andrew Bertie, the Grand Master that was related to Queen Elizabeth II. Well, even like I'm pretty sure like Tom Cruise was even married in like a Orsini castle. I want to say, and actually, you can see another ancient nobility family connection that I found to the current uh, power structure is Paul Colonna at General Electric. You can see a video of him here. General Electric. I haven't watched this. I should watch this because he's a Colonna. GE Asset Management's Paul Colonna talks about General Electric here. You see the chief investment officer at GE is a Colonna. Okay. There's been like 3 popes. Or I think there's been a couple Colonna popes as well. I think Pope Martin V was a Colonna. Okay. And there's been Medici popes. Yeah. Um, This is the guy. So this is the current John G. Codal is in the Georgetown Philademic Society. He's a United States District Judge of the United States District Court of the Southern District of New York in Manhattan. Went to the Jesuit Regis High School in New York and went to Jesuit Georgetown. Okay. Oh, look at this. Codal served as Assistant Special Prosecutor for the Watergate Special Prosecution Force. More proof that Watergate was a complete psyop. Okay, here's John G. Codal, the Watergate lawyer, Jesuit educated at Georgetown, currently on the Court Circuit Appeals in Manhattan. Okay, there he is right there. Yeah. And again, the company that built the Watergate complex was the Societe Generale Immobiliare. The Societe Generale is the company's name here. You can find, I think, some articles even on it. If you type in Societe Generale Immobiliare Watergate. And you see it's even on their Wikipedia page. Let me just read this here. Famous buildings built by the Mobilier, the Watergate Complex, and the Calverley Hilton Hotel in Rome. And guys, the Hilton family, Conrad Hilton, was a Knight of Columbus on the board of Catholic Duquesne University. See, the Societe Generale Mobilier was the largest Italian real estate construction company, and it actually this company was involved in the whole. I put the entire full audiobook of After Manhattan, the Vatican Billions, on my channel, and there's lots of good information on in that book, connecting the Societe Generale Mobiliare to the Vatican P2 Freemasonic banking syndicate that was headed up by Jesuit trained Michele Sindona. Yes, Michele Sindona was Jesuit trained. Okay, but continuing here, and actually here are the honorary Philademics that have been released. Okay. Starting in 1831, the members of the Jesuit Philademic Society began electing honorary members, and the electee would have to confirm his desire to become a member. At that time and for the years afterward, it was considered a mark of a special distinction to be elected an honorary member of the society, and some of the foremost men in public life at the national capital were so honored. And again, look at this. George Washington's let me see. Is it George Washington Parke Custis? Was a plantation owner, a slave owner, who was the stepson and George Washington's adopted son, was a member of the Jesuit Philademic Society. Upon reaching 21, George Washington Parke Custis inherited a large fortune from his late father, John Parke Custis. Let me see here. Yeah, he was at the Jesuit Philademic Society. I'm seeing if he went to Jesuit Georgetown. George Washington's adopted son, and actually, like I showed in the first beginning of the video, the first debate question at the society, at the Jesuit Georgetown Philademic Society, was who is a better man, Napoleon or George Washington, two of the biggest Jesuit tools and puppets in history. And here's the Jesuit that founded the Philademic Society, Father James Ryder S.J. Like I covered in the beginning of the video, the Jesuit that was behind Napoleon was Emmanuel Joseph Sieyes. And Jesuit Charles Carroll, John Carroll, and Daniel Carroll, Jesuit coadjutors. John Carroll was a full-out priest who founded Georgetown. But the Carroll Jesuits coadjutors were controlling George Washington, and George Washington called the Jesuit Leonard Neal to his deathbed. But fascinating that George Washington's adopted son was a member of the the Philademic Society. You see here, William Gaston was an honorary member. He was a United States jurist representative from North Carolina. He is the author of the official state song of North Carolina. He went to, we see here, the Old North State. Okay, so the name of the state song of California, or North Carolina, is called the Old North State. Gaston County, North Carolina is named after William Gaston, as are Lake Gaston, the city of Gastonia, North Carolina, and Gaston Hall is in Georgetown University, named after William Gaston. And he went to Jesuit Georgetown, okay, at the age of 13, becoming its first student, the first student at Jesuit Georgetown, William Gaston. Hitting so yeah, Wikipedia does have a lot of revealing information on like its pages, I swear, man. See here, continuing to go through the list of honorary members. President Ulysses S. Grant, who was the president that came in right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Like author Thomas Patrick Harris, who is a general or a colonel in the Civil War, like proves without a shadow of his doubt in his book, the suppressed evidence of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, that the Jesuits killed Lincoln, and he said that there was enough evidence to convict the Pope. Like um, John Wilkes Booth was a Roman Catholic. John Surratt, one of the men implicated in the assassination, actually like fled to the Vatican to join the Pope's bodyguards. The president, after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by the Jesuits, who made America a corporation, um, and with the 1871 Organic Act, was in the Philademic Society. Ulysses Grant also went to see the Pope on his world tour. Actually, I'll show you. You can read. I recommend you read the whole Wikipedia page on this. See the world tour of Ulysses S. Grant. I'll just show you this right here. You see here, Ulysses Grant met Pope Leo the 13th. Okay. The Grants returned to Italy, arriving in Rome, where they were promptly approached by an emissary from Pope Leo XIII and invited to attend a ceremony with King Umberto after their visit to the Vatican. Okay, so Ulysses Grant met the Pope. Okay, and like he was a part of the Philademic Society. Okay, yeah, George Abraham Lincoln was literally saying that the Jesuits were responsible for the Civil War. Okay, and Ulysses Grant incorporated America. I really recommend you read the entire Organic Act. Okay? Ulysses Grant met with like all like the European nobility as well on his voyage. James Hoban here was an Irish architect best known for designing the White House. The designer of the White House, again, the White House is named after uh, Andrew White, S.J. The Apostle of Maryland. Okay, this is who the White House is named after, guys. The Apostle of Maryland. It's on Wikipedia here. He's considered a forefather of Georgetown University. You can read information on Father Andrew White and him working with Lord Baltimore, George Calvert, in R.W. Thompson's book Papacy and the Civil Power. Andrew White joined the Society of Jesus. Okay, that's what the real White House is named after. Okay, that's the initiated meaning of the White House. Yeah, it's not called the White House just because it's white. Yeah, that's what the sheep are told. Um, James Hoban was an Irish architect. Interesting, like in Tupper Saucy's book, The Rulers of Evil, it's disclosed that the Capitol building in Washington D.C. was constructed on the land of the Jesuit educated Daniel Carroll, the brother of Jesuit priest Charles Carroll, and Jesuit trained Jesuit priest John Carroll, Jesuit trained Charles Carroll. James Hoban, you see here, he emigrated to the United States from Ireland, established himself as an architect. He also he engineered the Charleston County Courthouse, designed the White House. And he was a member of the Georgetown Philademic Society. Okay. You see here, Hoban was also involved in the development of Catholic institutions in the city, including Georgetown University, where his son was a member of the Jesuit community. He also designed the St. Patrick's Parish and the Georgetown Visitation Monastery, founded by another Kilkenny native, Teresa Lalore of Ballyragget. Yeah. So here's all the works that he designed here. The Georgetown Philademic member, James Hoban, he designed the White House, the Octagon House, the Charleston County Courthouse, the William Seasbrook House, the Oak Hill, the Taft Museum of Art, named after the Skull and Bonesman, William Howard Taft. Oh, that's funny. I think, or William Howard Taft. I'm pretty sure Taft comes from like a long line of politicians. There's probably a Taft before William Howard Taft in the Skull and Bones. But President Andrew Jackson was also at the Philademic Society in Georgetown. Interestingly, Andrew Jackson was a Scottish Rite Freemason. I find that really interesting because supposedly Jackson had an issue with the bank. That could have been a farce, much like William Gladstone's supposed being for the people in England. Actually, I apologize. My phone just died, guys. So I'm gonna go through the comment section or the chat before the video's over. But my phone's dead. Robert Edward Lee was an American, and the guy's another Confederate soldier. Okay, guys, that's connected to the Georgetown Philademic Society. Okay, Robert Edward Lee was an American Confederate soldier, best known as commander of the Confederate States Army. He commanded the Army of the Northern Virginia in the American Civil War from 1862 until surrender in 1865. Okay, yet another Confederate military commander, Robert E. Lee. Okay. Let me see here. He served as a senior military advisor to President Jefferson Davis, who was writing letters to the Pope. Okay, type in President Jefferson Davis writes letters to the Pope, and you can see the letters. Okay. Um, Robert E. Lee. Okay, he surrendered his entire army to Ulysses Grant. That's very interestingly. That could have been um, done in with the foreknowledge that Ulysses Grant intended to incorporate the United States. Robert McClellan was a U.S. statesman serving as U.S. Representative from Michigan, the ninth governor of Michigan, and the United States Secretary of the Interior from 1853 to 1857. He was a member of the Georgetown Philademic Society. Okay, let's see if there's anything on it here. Began a private law practice in Detroit. He had a Secretary of the Interior and a Governor of Michigan. Honorary member of the Philademic Society. Franklin Pierce, I showed you here, a former president of the United States from 1853 to 1857. Doing the Masonic hidden hand here, just so you can see Pope Francis doing the hidden hand. Joseph Stalin, Jesuit educated, does the hidden hand. Friedrich Nietzsche does the hidden hand. Pretty much, I think Fidel Castro I've seen doing it. George Washington and Napoleon both did the hidden hand. Actually, I'll show pictures of that as this video is over, because like this is the first debate of the Philademic Society was who was a better man, um, George Washington or Napoleon. Yeah. And he was an advocate of slavery. He alienated anti-slavery groups by championing and signing the Kansas-Nebraska Act and enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act. That was signed in 1793. That's funny. Yeah, the former president Franklin Pierce in the Philademic Society. William Winston Seton. Okay, he was a former mayor of the 13th mayor of Washington D.C. Okay, he was in the Philademic Society. Okay. He's mayor of Washington D.C. from 1819 to 1831, and he founded the St. John's Episcopal. I can't pronounce this word for some reason right now. He founded the St. John's Church in Lafayette Square. Okay. um, You see here, Seton was a member of the prestigious Society of the Columbian Institute of the Promotion of Arts and Sciences, which also had John Adams and Philademic member Andrew Jackson in it. John Quincy Adams also funded a Catholic church and tagged along with Charles Carroll and George Washington up to Canada to sign the Quebec Act. Zachary Taylor was the 12th president of the United States from March 1949 till 1850. He was in the Philademic Society. His top priority at president was preserving the Union, but he died at 16 months into his term before making any progress into the status of slavery. Another former president of the United States in the Philademic Society, Zachary Taylor, and a huge connection here, absolutely huge to this society, is Archbishop Hughes of New York. Archbishop who got the Bibles out of the public schools. This archbishop was riling up draft riots against Abraham Lincoln. He actually convinced thousands of Roman Catholics to fight for the Confederate Army and thousands of Irish Catholics refused to fight for the North due to the propaganda of Archbishop Hughes. And Archbishop Hughes founded the Jesuit Fordham University in 1841. Very, very influential. Became known as Dagger John. Okay. I mean, you can read. It's documented that John Hughes was the Catholic priest that got the Protestant Bibles out of public schools. I think I'm gonna end the video here though. It's just actually no. Before I go, I gotta show you the hidden hand just with Washington and Napoleon. Let me see here. Yeah, it's a longer video, so there's lots of information. I recommend you guys go from the front to the back if you're just tagging along now. But you see here, the Philademic Society, founded by Father James A. Ryder, S.J., the first debate of the so-called Jesuit Debating Society, was on the topic of who is a better man, Napoleon Bonaparte or General Washington. And you can both of these guys did the hidden hand here. Bonaparte. Here's Napoleon Bonaparte doing the hidden hand. Okay, right there. There's Jesuit educated Joseph Stalin doing the hidden hand. But here's Napoleon Bonaparte doing the hidden hand. And here's George Washington doing the hidden hand. And you're gonna see I showed you a bit earlier in this video with Napoleon, with the Code Napoleon, Emmanuel Joseph Size, a Jesuit, was his advisor. Robespierre and Joseph Ignatius Guillotine, and like many of the French Revolution prominent figures were Jesuit educated Freemasons. You see here, like the reason the Jesuits were debating who's a better man between George Washington and Napoleon is because both these guys were complete tools of the Jesuits. Here's George Washington doing the hidden hand, just like Napoleon. I think I'm gonna end the video here as it's gone on pretty long. But all roads lead to Rome, and thank you for tuning in, everyone. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace and love. Actually, well, geez, I almost forgot to look at the comments. Sorry, I. Okay, let me see here. Live streaming. Go to my. Oh, let me see here. I want to see what you guys are saying in the chat. Channel. Okay, here. Here, where's the live chat? It'll pop up here on the right. Okay, so let's see what you guys are saying. Wait, yep, he was married to a nun while he was raping his servant. Who are you guys talking about up here? Or let me scroll up here. All religions are corrupted. The Vatican has their fingers in Islam as well. Like, actually, I do think they have their fingers in Islam. Well, just recently, a former king of Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah II, was a member of the Roman Catholic Order of the Golden Fleece. Yeah, like, and just like in terms of like like you know how like Fatima is like where like kind of just if you analyzing like how like Muslims worship Fatima and Catholics worship Mary, like it is very similar. Like even like it's interesting how like Ignatius Loyola was in a cave too when he had his supposed moment of enlightenment, and Muhammad was also in a cave. But from what I've researched of Islam, like there is like most religions, like Islam like has its astrotheology and astrology, and like there's like an esoteric side to Islam as well as like an exoteric side. But like no doubt in terms of like the ecclesiastical priest class of Islam, like they're controlled by the Catholic Church, one and the same. Jesuits are control of. I'm just looking here, Jeremiah. Jesuits are control of all religions. I agree. Seventh Day Advents, Roman Catholic, Evangelical, Jewish, Baptist, all Christian denominations. I agree. Actually, I walked into a Anglican church in St. Catharines. I forget the name of the church. It was on Queenston Street here in St. Catharines, Ontario. I walked into an Anglican church, like on the outside of the church, an Anglican church, and you could say that historically the Anglican Church has always been a bastard child of Rome, but they had the Jesuit IHS on like the Anglican church. And the former Jesuit Alberto Rivera said that when Ronald Reagan was sworn in facing the obelisk, that it was a sign that when because Reagan was the first president ever to be sworn in facing the Roman obelisk in D.C. Alberto Rivera, the former Jesuit, said that that was a sign that the Jesuits had complete control of the ecumenical movement and that they had all the various denominations of churches under their control. Well, I agree. It goes deep. Like the current religions, it all goes back to ancient priest class. Absolutely, yeah. That's kind of been like the history of humanity has been like the priesthood enslaving the common folk. um, let me see here. 2.3 billion Catholics and Christians versus 0.01 Jewish push the Jews. 0.01. Yeah, I think yeah, SS 64. Like people just don't realize like if the Jews were pulling this off, like literally 98% of like 90% 98% of all the Jews in the world would be plotting for a new world order. It's hilarious. Like a Jesuit Joseph Rettinger. Actually, let me. This video is going on a bit, but I got to. This is just a good point. I'm going to show you this. The Jesuit Joseph Rettinger was actually who founded the Bilderberg Group. Was uh, um, via the Black Pope Volodymyr Lyachowski. Joseph Rettinger was asked to create a state of Israel. And this is even sourced on the Bilderberg website. See here. See, so I'll start. So I'll just read the whole thing here just for some context. So by the age of 25, Joseph Rettinger became the representative of the Polish National Council in London, responsible for promoting the Polish independence movement among British intelligence. In the London salons, he put into practice the techniques he learned in Paris and sought the company of the leaders of the political and cultural life of the British capital. Rettinger quickly became friends with figures such as writer Joseph Conrad and the novelist and propagandist Arnold Bennett, former Prime Minister Herbert Asquith, and the playwright George Bernard Shaw, who said that George Bernard Shaw said he wanted the Fabian Society to be the Jesuits of socialism. And I document that here in this little post I wrote up. Rettinger also met with social campaigners Sidney and Beatrice Webb, Lord Alfred Balfour, Lionel Curtis, and the eugenicist Winston Churchill. As he learned Rettinger to ride the winds of power, he found himself swept upwards to the summit of Olympus. From here on, he never ceased to associate with men of prominence. His influence began to be felt from 10 Downing Street to the Quai d'Orsay, from the Vatican to the Kremlin. Rettinger's understanding of psychology and human relations gave him an ability to blend in like a chameleon, like a good Jesuit does blend in, like a chameleon, wherever he went. Rettinger was able to simultaneously inhabit many different worlds, mixing with people from very different backgrounds, holding different and sometimes absolutely opposing views. Listen to the Jesuits, Freemasons, Synarchists. Synarchists are the fascist phalange startup that they originate back in 1935. They were set up. The Synarchists were set up by the Nazis and the Phalange, and Joseph Rettinger made contact with the Synarchists because he was in Mexico during the 1920s. The Fabian Socialists and the supporters of imperial federalism, Joseph Rettinger supported or blended in with. Between 1906 and 1920, Rettinger worked on projects diverse as quote or the definition of a reorganization plan for Central and Eastern Europe, wanted by the general of the Jesuits, the Polish Count Lyachowski Woldemir. Rettinger was sent by Lyachowski for to draft the creation of a world government with the British Federalist Arthur Capel. Listen, the Jesuit Joseph Rettinger was chartered to create a state of Israel in collaboration with some of the leaders of the Zionist movement, such as Chaim Weizmann and Nathum Solikov. Okay. Can't make this up. And actually, you know what? I'll prove to you, like, I have the Joseph Rettinger memoirs in my hand right now as I'm talking to you. I'll show you this right here. And I'm pretty sure he even writes about like this is proof from his own memoirs that he was a Jesuit. This is the founder of the Bilderberg. I don't want this video to run on too long, but see your Memoirs of an Eminized Grise, Joseph Rettinger, published by Sussex University Press, 1972. The quote I just read to you was from the Bilderberg website that called him a Jesuit. Here's a picture of Jesuit Joseph Rettinger with Winston Churchill right here. That's Rettinger. There's Churchill. I also have a picture of Winston Churchill in my book on William Randolph Hearst at the Hearst Castle in Saint Simeon. Yeah, here's the quote of Rettinger from his own mouth, just acknowledging the Jesuits. Let me see the page here. Uh, well, maybe. Uh, oh, it's under Lyachowski. Oh yeah, Father Lyachowski, page 34. Yeah, give me a second here. Uh, Again, this is I'm gonna read from the words of Joseph Rettinger here from his. And guys, these memoirs are filtered down, like they're watered down, like they were published by a university. Like there's lots of stuff that Rettinger would never want to be exposed, but there is some interesting stuff in here. But this is quoting from Jesuit Joseph Rettinger's mouth. I'm reading from page 34 of Memoirs of an Eminized Grise. Okay. Another person with whom I got in touch was the general of the Jesuits, Count Lidichowski, a Pole and a friend of my guardian, Count Zamowski. I went to see him at the chateau of Zires, that is general of the Jesuits, Lidomir Lidichowski. I went to see him at the Chateau Zazirs near Zurich in Switzerland. So the Jesuit general was in Switzerland, interestingly, at this point. It was the most spooky place I had ever seen. This is from Joseph Rettinger's mouth here. It was the most spooky place I had ever seen, full of Jesuit austerity, gloom, and I must say, frankly, dirt. However, because I was a fellow countryman and because I had been recommended by Count Zamowski, the general received me kindly and gave me much of his time. The head of the Jesuit order, although he promised me all of the aid in his power, was pessimistic as to my chance of success. He was the first person to point out that the Germans had penetrated so deeply into the administration of the Austro-Hungarian Empire that it would be difficult for the Austrians to start a negotiation for separate peace without the Germans knowing about it. Um, once in Austria, I contacted a number of people, the most important being Count Menserdov Poily, the former Austrian ambassador in Paris. Okay, but there you see it right there. That Joseph Rettinger documenting his meeting with the general of the Jesuits, Waldemar Lichowski. Okay, and he says here, interestingly, Joseph Rettinger had a meeting with the German legation in Bern, Switzerland, where also Alan Dulles, who met with Heinrich Himmler, according to the own CIA documents. That's where Alan Dulles was posted, working for the Office of Strategic Services, the Knight of Malta, Alan Dulles, whose nephew Avery Dulles was a full-on Jesuit priest. Yeah. I think I'm gonna end the video here. It's just this has been a long video, but I hope I exposed. I haven't seen. I think I did a good in detail expose of the Philademic Society, and I hope you now are aware of like the influence of the Philademic Society. And I just thought it was hilarious that their first debate was who is a better man, Napoleon or George Washington. Two huge Jesuit tools and puppets and agents. If you examine their historical actions. But that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and Nam Nas.